So I want to welcome you. My name is Karen Mayer. I'm Director of Strategic Operations for Congressman Bilirakis. And I just want to welcome you tonight. We felt that it was very important to put on these workshops that help you really dig in and go through the budget and understand the budget process and understand what the Congressman goes through when he's up in Washington, D.C. So we are putting on 3 of these events. You are the kickoff event here in Pasco County, and then tomorrow you'll be doing the same in Citrus County and Hernando County. So we hope that you are really able to dig in tonight and learn and understand. The Congressman, as you may have heard, is serving on President Trump's DOGE committee, and so it's really an exciting time for us to look at. Right? So I don't want to take up too much time. We have a tight schedule tonight to get through everything that we need to. So I will go ahead and welcome and introduce Congressman Gus Bilirakis.
Thank you, Karen. I appreciate everybody being here. You guys are great. And it's really important that we do this because I need to get feedback from my constituents. This is such an important topic. And the best ideas come from the people. So you're going to be legislators or Congress people tonight. And Phil has been working with me for a while, but not with me, but with the Concord Coalition. We have done this, but it's been a few years now. But obviously, we want to get more ideas because of the DOGE Commission. But again, I want to know what your priorities are, what you want to keep, and what you want to cut. This is not a partisan meeting, folks. I think you know that. And the Concord Coalition is not partisan. The founders are Paul Tongass, a Democrat from Massachusetts, and Warren Rudman, a Republican from the Northeast. I'm not sure exactly. Oh, New Hampshire. I thought it was New Hampshire. And Pete Peterson, who was the former Secretary of Commerce under Nixon. So they're no longer with us now. But again, they were fiscal conservatives. And folks, we've got to do something. We've got to do something. We've got to think of our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren. But we must protect the vital programs as well. So I want to get your input, your feedback, as I said before, and I really look forward to it. I think you're going to enjoy this. But there are some really difficult decisions that have to be made. So thank you for being here. God bless you, and it is an honor and a privilege to represent you in Congress. I have my staff, of course, you just met Karen. Liz is our Chief of Staff. Raise your hand, Liz. Yay! And Summer is incredible. She really is. She's our Deputy Chief of Staff, but she works in the district. Liz goes back and forth, and Karen's here full-time. So we're very fortunate, and it's great to start off in Pasco County. And then tomorrow we'll have Citrus and in Hernando County. So without further ado, I want to introduce Phil, who will be running the show tonight. I'll be going around and maybe answering some questions if you'd like. I don't want to interrupt you because this is a very serious topic. But if you want to talk to me, fine. Otherwise, no problem. I'll go to the next table. But Phil has worked. He's a Hill staffer. So he was a Hill staffer. Now he works, of course, for the Concord Coalition. Went to the University of Georgia. I know we have one person here from Georgia. And he's just a great guy, and I think you'll really enjoy this exercise. But more importantly, I will get your feedback because we want to be true representatives of the people. So thank you very much. God bless you. Enjoy it.
Thank you, Congressman, and I'd like to echo his remarks. It's a pleasure to be in Pasco County tonight. I actually went to high school here in Florida, down in Okeechobee County. How many people know where that is? Hey, I'm surprised. Most people don't know where Okeechobee is. But I did wind up upgrading at the University of Georgia. So who was that bulldog? Is it? Oh, there's a bulldog back there. Okay, good. We've got some classy people here. But Congressman, I really appreciate you doing this event tonight. Like you said, I think it's very important that you hear from your constituents. And what we've got planned for you tonight is one of my favorite things that we do at the Concord Coalition. Our whole mission at the Concord Coalition is to educate Americans about federal budget policy. So that has us talking about everything related to the national debt, which stands at over $36 trillion. Our annual deficits, every year that we have a deficit, it goes on top of the already large national debt to make it grow even bigger. But we're going to talk about everything the federal budget does tonight. And you're going to have, this is one of the few places where you can come to talk about all of these issues, right? Because the congressman has access to all kind of experts that you can bring to you and that you can talk to on all these different issues. But there's very few places where you can come and in one setting, and in less than 2 hours, we're going to try, to get through all of these major budget issues. So you're going to see, because all these things aren't stacked up at the same height, right, in terms of the budget. There's some bigger things and some smaller things, and so you're going to see that. No better way to do it than an experiential exercise. We give a great chart talk at the Concord College. Y'all remember when Ross Perot ran for president back in 1990? So we have one of those at the Concord Coalition where we give that. I think it's a great chart talk. But basically, there's no better way to learn than to do. And so that's what we're going to give you some. We're going to give a Beyond the Bumper sticker talk tonight. We're going to give you over 37 different CBO scored. CBO is a nonpartisan congressional budget office. CBO scored options, so that you can actually deal with real options, right, that have been scored over 10 years. So you actually see what the projected costs are, what the suggested savings would be, depending on what you can do. And it's a big mix of things in here tonight. I mean, I'll tell you, if you're a Republican, there's some things in here that are going to aggravate you tonight. If you're a Democrat, there's some things in here that are going to aggravate you tonight. If you're an independent, there's some things in here that are going to aggravate you tonight, because this is truly a bipartisan exercise where we have gone to members of Congress and asked them, you know, what are you talking about? What are your colleagues talking about? These are the things that people are talking about on Capitol Hill. In some cases, you'll see some things that have already even been voted on that you'll have a chance to vote on tonight. So that's a little bit of an overview. If you're really interested in these issues, I'll linger a little bit longer tonight. Happy to talk with anybody one-on-one. Please reach out to us. Concord Coalition has a great website. I'll give you my contact information. Let's stay in touch, especially if you're a fan of the CBA, which I know we have one person here who already is. So with that, let's go ahead and get underway. The device by which we will be assembling our own 10-year federal budget tonight is right there on your table, because there's a workbook. Raise your hand if you don't have a workbook. Okay, good. So let's go ahead and turn to the first page. It's titled Congratulations. Or maybe I should say my condolences, Congressman. You've just become members of Congress tonight, and you've been assigned to a special committee charged with finding ways to reduce projected federal deficits over the next 10 years. Sound familiar, right? We've heard of this, has been in the news, and you know, these issues are on the front burner right now. So your committee is responsible for examining a variety of possible spending and revenue policies. Some options reduce spending and or raise revenues, thereby reducing future budget deficits. Other policies, however, would increase spending and or lower taxes, which of course would increase deficits. So as you and the members of your committee, and by the way, your committee is who you're seated at the table with tonight, right? So each of these tables will be a committee, and you'll be producing your own 10-year budget tonight. So as you and the members of your committee review these options, I ask that you think about these three things right here on the middle of the page, right? This keeps it realistic, and as we go along. First, economics. How will your decisions affect the economy tonight? Be thinking jobs and wages, both in the short term and the long term. Could some policies help in the short term, but cause damage later? Next up, public policy. Should reducing the deficit be your primary goal every time you look at something, right? There might be something you want to spend on tonight, and if it is, and if your table votes for that, you'll have a chance to find an offset for it later on, right, to make up the difference. So you can go either way as you look at each of these options. Next up, public policy. Should reducing the deficit be your primary goal, regardless of other policy impacts? Which areas of the federal government should receive more funding or less funding? Which parts of society would be most affected? Is the federal government too big? Is it too small? Or is it just about the right size? Again, it's up to you. Do your choices fit your vision for our nation's future? And then lastly, politics. As much as we try to depoliticize things at the Concord Coalition, frankly, there's probably not a bigger political document in the world than the U.S. budget, right? I mean, you name the issue, and I can tell you how it addresses, or in some cases fails to address, the issue. But what do I mean by politics? Basically, will your voters support your decision? This is something the congressman has to think about all the time, right, when he's making these votes. Will voters support your decision? Can you defend your decisions and be reelected? Will there be a 30-second ad run on Tampa television against you based on what you've done here tonight? These are the type things, right, the members have to think about when they're voting. Next up, I've got to take just a couple minutes to give you a quick budget outlook. Now, had you been actual members of Congress, you would actually go up to Harvard for a couple of days, and they would give you a much more detailed and longer briefing with someone who outranks me, but tonight you got me and we got about 5 minutes, so let's see if we can get through this, all right? The budget outlook. The federal budget has long suffered from a structural imbalance between revenues and spending, which has led to chronic and structural budget deficits even during times of relative peace and prosperity. Despite relatively steady economic growth over the last 4 decades, if you think about it, the structural imbalance has actually persisted, and policymakers have compounded the problem with major legislation that cut taxes or increase spending, or oftentimes both. And for this reason, deficits are projected to rise really dramatically in the coming years. The nonpartisan CBO has projected that deficits will actually total more than $20 trillion over the next decade. So remember I told you earlier we're at $36 trillion? If we were to walk away from this room tonight and you decided to do nothing, on autopilot, we would just add another $20 trillion to the national debt. So that's our baseline tonight. You can decide, are you going to add to that, or are you going to take away from that as we vote on these different options? Again, that's the baseline that we're dealing with. Okay, let's flip the page. It wouldn't be the Concord Coalition facilitated event if I didn't at least show you a couple of charts. So this first one is fiscal year 2024, the federal budget, and it shows our deficit last year. We had almost a $2 trillion budget. So basically these numbers are in hundreds of billions of dollars, right? So if it's got a comma in it, we've actually graduated to trillions of dollars. So if we were to have a balanced budget, these two towers would be the same height, right? So guess which one is spending and guess which one is revenue. It's pretty easy to tell. So we spent last year $6.7 trillion. So $6,757 billion we spent last year. And then we brought in revenues $4,918. That difference is last year's deficit, which was $1,839 billion. So that was last year's deficit, which again made the debt go up over to $36 trillion. But don't try to memorize these numbers, by the way, you'll drive yourself crazy if you try to. Just kind of look at the trends that I'm talking about. But there is one number that I'd like for you to maybe memorize, or at least kind of remember. And that's the top part of the spending side right there. Interest on the debt. $881 billion we spent last year simply servicing that national debt. So if anybody ever tells you, does the national debt have a cost? It quite literally has a cost, and there it was last year. Now, had we been doing this event in Pasco County in 2019, that number would have only been about 300 and something billion. Had we been doing this last year, that number would have only been 600 and something billion. Now it's 881 billion. Let's flip the page. Where are we going to be 10 years from now? In the year 2035? Well, according to the CBO, we're going to have a pretty big deficit that year. We're going to spend over $10 trillion, and we're going to bring in revenue just at $8 trillion. So there's our deficit again for that year. But look at the interest. Look at that top line under the spending tower. This is not an error. This is the actual number. $1,783 billion simply paying interest for 1 year. That year, that's where we're headed. So when people ask you why are economists of all stripes concerned about these issues, this is pretty much exhibit A right here, right, is the interest cost. So that's just one part of it. We could do an entire class, right, and they do teach classes on this, by the way, on every one of these areas of both spending and revenue. I've talked a little bit about the spending side. You can see, that, again, this is everything the federal budget does, so it includes the major healthcare programs, defense, Social Security, everything that Uncle Sam does. And then on the revenue side, you can see, you know, all the different ways we we have revenue. One of the things the Congressman didn't mention in my bio is my first job, I was a bag boy at USAVE grocery store in Okeechobee. And I remember getting my first paycheck, and my question was, who is this FICA? Well, that's FICA right there, right? So FICA came in, you can see it's a payroll tax. About 32% of our revenues came from that one source. But most of our revenue actually comes from individual income taxes, which you can see, these are projections for 10 years out, but you can see what they are for that year. Now, before I finish this briefing, there's one really big thing I need to mention that's just kind of hanging out there. It's the elephant in the room. And it's something that we need to figure out what to do with. And that is a key driver of our continued deficits over the next 10 years and beyond. It is really a key fundamental transformation of our society. It has nothing to do with politics or even us being as polarized as we are and all that. It has to do with demographics. Lower birth rates and the aging of our population, both of which lead to a reduction in the rate of growth of our working age population. When combined with rising healthcare costs, these changes will cause federal spending on our programs like Social Security and Medicare to really dramatically rise, but income and payroll tax revenues from a proportionally smaller workforce will, of course, fail to be able to keep pace. And then growing levels of government borrowing and rising interest rates are also expected to push up federal spending on those net interest payments that we were just talking about. One of the reasons I love coming to Florida is because here in Florida, we are the future. If you look at the demographics of Florida, and what I mean by that, we know we have a lot of senior citizens here in Florida, right? We are becoming a nation of Floridas. And so it's kind of a high-class problem if you think about it, right? We're living longer. We just have to figure out how to pay for it. And so that's what a lot of our problems, right? If you were to ask me to sum all these things up in one sentence, like what is our challenges? What is our biggest challenge? It's this. We've basically over-promised and underfunded. And we got to figure out how are we going to fix this, right? And so this is why we turn to you. And I admire the Congressman for having the bravery, by the way, to do these things. I wish more of it. Could you imagine if we had a meeting like this and in the 434 other districts around the country, you know, how much progress we could make? Because I overheard some of you guys sitting at the table. This is not, we're from broadly different backgrounds. I already heard debates earlier tonight going back and forth between people. We've got MSNBC viewers and Fox viewers seated at the same table tonight. Can you imagine? And I have faith in you guys. And I think when we get done with this tonight, you can pat yourself on the back if you get through this, because if you can hammer out a budget here in Pasco County, the Congressman can go back to Washington and tell his colleagues it can be done, right? Okay, let's flip the page. So now we turn to you guys to help us make some hard choices. So with your fellow committee members, you'll be reviewing and discussing the policy options that you're going to see on the next 5 pages here. You'll be recording your group's decisions tonight by placing the options positive or negative effects in the 10-year deficit in these boxes provided. If your group decides not to enact a particular option, simply leave the box blank or write a 0. And now why is that? Some of the things you'll be doing tonight could actually add to the deficit. And if you pass that, then you write that in there. Some of the things you do tonight will take away from the deficit. If you do that, then you write that number in there. So basically, if you pass something, you just write that number in there that's already in there. If it fails to pass, just leave it blank or write a 0, because you're having 0 impact on that deficit that we talked about earlier, right, on that baseline. And I'll give you an example for that in just a minute. Now, given our time constraints tonight, our range of possibilities is limited to a representative sample of these budget options that have been considered and debated in Washington. And I know some of the common complaints that we get, by the way, we didn't have enough time. We didn't have enough information. If I could amend this thing, I would vote for it. Those complaints I hear from real live members of Congress as they walk off the House floor. So if I hear them from you guys tonight, I know we might have an accurate simulation here, right? But those are our rules. Majority rules, no ties, and you cannot amend it. The basic reason you can't amend these things is because the CBO has scored these out over 10 years. And some of them are front-loaded in the first 5 or back-loaded in the second 5 years or whatever. So it doesn't just work. You can't just, cut the baby in half on this and say, hey, we'll do half that number. So this is one of the challenges the Congressman faces all the time, because he has to vote the way that you're going to be voting tonight, which you really only have 3 choices. You can vote for it, you can vote against it, or you can abstain. Those are your 3 choices. And again, at your table, if you have a tie, it actually fails because you have to muster a majority vote. Now, background information and arguments for and against each of these options are included in this really neat options book that you're going to have at your table. So basically there's a line item in here that you'll be voting on. And for every line item, there's actually a one-pager in this options book. And it's really cool because it lists all the pros and cons. I actually like to keep a copy of this at my bedpost at night because it's kind of hard to find good information with good, reliable sources now, you know, so this has that. We're going to need these options book with us because as the Congressman said, we got a couple more of these coming up the next Thursday, but we can email these to you. So anybody that wants to, and the cool thing about the email version is there are hyperlinks in this options book. So if you really want to go into a rabbit hole and figure out where these numbers come from, we'll give you that option to do that. One last little tip about the options book. Please don't use the options book for every single option. If you already have a consensus in your group, go ahead and start voting, right? Because we're going to do what they do on the Senate side, which they call vote-a-rama. We're going to be voting, voting, voting. Basically, you only have like 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes to vote on each of these things. So if you have a consensus, go ahead and vote real fast so you can save more time for the things that you're going to be voting on. And this time constraint is something that members of Congress face, right, when they go through these things. So again, don't use the options book for every single option, otherwise we'll be having breakfast together more. Okay, lastly, the maximum amount of deficit reduction possible in our exercise tonight is $12 trillion over the coming decade, and that's before interest savings. You actually get a little bonus for interest savings if you do save some money. If, however, you were to approve all the policies in here that increase spending or reduce revenue, you could actually increase the deficit tonight by $5 trillion. So again, it's up to you. You can go either way. But by doing these things tonight, the Congressman and I also want to see what you come up with. We want to see what the American people and what people who live here in Pasco County think about these options. So you're going to help us by doing that. Now, the last thing I'm going to do before I turn it over to you is ask you, I know we've got a lot of leadership potential in this room, but we're going to need one person at each table to be the chair. And the job of the chair is to go through each of these and to conduct a vote. And then at the end, tally these up. And you may be chosen to come forward at the end and give a brief report, depending on, we've got a lot of groups here tonight, so we might only be able to select a few. So you might be a chairperson that's chosen to come forward and discuss what you've done, what your number is, and whether or not you'll be reelected too, right? So we'll ask you all kind of fun questions if you do that. But the last thing I'm gonna do is show you what it's like to be a chairperson. I'm gonna play the role of a chairperson real quick, just to show you what it's like, right? Okay, so we're getting started. I'm the chairperson, Bill Smith. Option number 1, expand access to free universal preschool. Well, I don't really need the options book to tell me that. What does this do? Plus 200. Well, obviously, we're expanding a big new federal government program, so it's going to add $200 billion to the deficit over the next decade. So my first, I'm like, I'm a deficit hawk, and we're already going the wrong way, Dad. But then I look at what it does. Expand access to free universal preschool. Well, if both parents were working, maybe that would give us that extra FICA taxpayer we needed. So remember how I told you we need more FICA taxpayers? So maybe I could be talked into it. If we do, we vote for a majority, then you write plus 200. If it fails to pass, then you write a 0 right there. So that's going one direction. Let's go the other direction. Let's look at option number 5. Eliminate federal subsidies for Amtrak and other inner-city rail systems. Negative 71. Well, what would that do? Well, if you're eliminating funding, you're obviously saving money, right? So you're going to knock off $71 billion, because these are in billions of dollars. $71 billion you're going to save over the next 10 years. Well, if Amtrak runs through my district, I might be interested in this, but if I'm from South Georgia, I could not care less about this, right? So it depends on where you're from, which brings me to this point. Envision your congressional district, right? It can be this congressional district, or if you're from another state and you'd like to be from Iowa tonight, you could do that. You can be from any of the 435 congressional districts. So be thinking of the state you want to represent, thinking of that constituency as you go through that. I'll be periodically interrupting you to show you where you should be on time. It's about 25 after. We've got about an hour to do this, to do these votes. So I'll be periodically interrupting you to give you an example. There are 4 categories in here. And the first category should take you about 16 minutes. So I'll be interrupting you in about 16 minutes to see where you are. So pick a chairperson, good luck, and Godspeed.
I've been chairperson for this address before. Now, I'm a dictator sometimes.
Okay, if the House of Representatives will please come to order. Hopefully this time you're finishing up with Category 1 and moving on to Category 2. If you're not, go ahead and try to speed up a little bit. And thank you very much.
There should be no.
Okay, if the House of Representatives will please come to order at this time. Hopefully you're finishing up with Category 2 and moving on to Category 3. I heard a chuckle over there. Hopefully that means you're right on time. Okay, if the House of Representatives will please come to order. Hopefully you're finishing up with Category 3 and moving on to Category 4. We have about 20 minutes left of voting, so see if you can knock everything out in the next 20 minutes, okay? Good luck. Okay, members of Congress, if the House of Representatives will please come to order. If the gentleman will suspend. I want to say that. Okay, our time has come. By a show of hands, how many people have completed voting? 1, 2, 3. Okay, we've got enough to go ahead and start doing our wrap-up session, then. Okay, if the House will please come to order. Please suspend conversations. And one of the first things I'd like to tell you is both the Concord Coalition and the Congressman were very interested in your results tonight. And we've got a really large group, so I want to make sure that we get a comprehensive view of each of your results. So if you are the chairperson for your table, please raise your hand. Would you please take a picture of the last page of the book, or have one of your committee members take a picture of that last picture, and can you email it to the Congressman's staff? And if you guys take out a pencil and write down this email address, please. And Karen's email address is karen.mayer, karen.mayer at mail.house.gov. If you will email that picture of that last page, that will give us an idea of the categories that you voted on and what your final number is. But now we want to see what some of those final numbers are. So who is the chairperson for table number 1? You're not done, okay? Who is the chairperson for table number 2? All right, will you come up here to this part of the stage, please, sir? And bring your workbook with you. All right, we'll come back to you then. All right, who's the chairperson for table 3? All right, could you please come forward with your workbook and your final number? Could you tell us your name and where you're from, please, sir?
Edward Randall, I'm over in Newport Richey.
All right, from Newport Richey. All right, Chairman Randall, what is the total effect? All right, folks, this is our first one, so listen to this number. What is the total effect on the 10-year deficit for you guys?
Minus $1,541 billion.
All right, round of applause for this group. That's a very solid number. I want to put that number in perspective for a second. So the last time we did something kind of like this in Washington, before DOGE and this stuff we've been hearing so much about lately, was when President Obama was in office and Speaker Boehner was the Speaker of the House. They were trying to work and do a 10-year deal like you guys are doing tonight. They got close. They eventually walked away from the table. Oftentimes wonder if they knew what was to come, if maybe they would have stayed at the table a little while longer. But rumor has it they were about $1.4 trillion. So how did you get to that number? Were there a couple items that you guys voted on? Because that's a sizable number, right? Well, I see some zeros. So you did vote for everything. Oh, you meant, well, okay. Interesting. So were there some, what was the conversation like at your table? Was it acrimonious? Was it harmonious? Did you have some substantive conversation?
We agreed on everything, and then we voted up or down on each item.
And then last question, based on this budget that you've assembled, you've been a member of Congress for 2 hours, do you think you'll be reelected?
No.
A rare, candid comment from everyone. All right, round of applause for table number 3. Thank you so much. All right, table number 4. Can you tell us your name and where you're from?
From Trinity.
All right, from Trinity, Florida. So what, Madam Chair, what is the total effect on the 10-year deficit tonight?
$5,032 billion.
Wow, round of applause for $5 trillion in savings over the next 10 years. So I'm dying to know, that's a sizable number. That's a pretty, so how did you guys get to such a big number? What was it like every day?
Strong on personal responsibility. Well, I added the interest. Strong on personal responsibility, strong on defense, and no new taxes. So that's.
So one last question. Based on this 10-year budget that this table number 4 has assembled tonight, and you'll be facing the voters, do you think you'll be reelected?
I think people are ready for a change. And
Thank you, table 4. Okay, table 5. Are you guys ready? Hi, would you mind coming down? Coming on down. Thank you. We want to hear you on the microphone. Come on down. You're our next contestant, as they say.
I want to take the
And hopefully your price will be right. Okay, could you tell us your name and where you're from?
Hi, I'm Bilirakis from Newport Richey.
From Newport Richey. Okay, Madam Chair, can you tell us what the total effect on the 10-year deficit is after all your hard work tonight?
We cut $9 trillion.
So how, you gotta tell me how you did that.
Well, we did that by making sure that we cut government spending. We don't want to give the government more money than what we give them, because you give government more money, they're going to spend it. So let's cut the deficit, right? Let's cut taxes, put more taxes in people's, put more money in people's paychecks. Let them spend it. Let them stimulate the economy. What's happening now with DOGE, with Elon and Trump, what they're doing, they're finding fraud all over the U.S. government. When we cut U.S. government spending, we don't give them the money to spend. If they don't have the money to spend, they will not spend it. So we voted to cut $9 trillion.
So I have to ask you this question. The same question I asked when I end with everybody. Based on this budget that you've assembled, are you ready to face the voters? Do you think you'll be reelected?
I am.
Okay, good.
I believe in, states' rights. Let the state handle our own school system, right? Let the state handle our own school system. I mean, we're great here. We don't pay income taxes in Florida, which I love, but look at that. We don't pay income taxes in the state of Florida, and we're not in a deficit. We're in a surplus. So why can't the federal government do the same thing?
All right, thank you very much. Okay, I want to go back to table 1. Did you guys, no, table 2? No, okay, okay, table, where are we? Table number 6. Are you guys ready? Okay, table number 7. Still working on it. Table number 8. Do we have a chairperson for table number 8? 8, come on down. All right, table number 8. Okay, Congressman, can you tell us your name and where you're from?
Bill Sperry, I'm in Newport Richey.
All right, the Congressman from Newport Richey and the chairman of his group tonight is now going to report to us the total effect on the 10-year deficit. Mr. Chairman, what number do you have for us?
We got 3.6 trillion. We didn't quite finish number 4, but we're at 3.6.
All right, so what was your experience like back there? Did y'all have some good substantive debate? Do you think you heard from a lot of different types of people?
We definitely had some debate. That's why we're running a little behind.
I love it. What were some of the items that got you to such a big number like that?
Well, let's see.
Anything, because healthcare is a big one, right? If we don't figure out how to bend the long-term healthcare cost curve, that can eat up the whole budget. Also, there's opportunities for tax reform in there. Anything on there that attracted y'all?
Healthcare was the big issue that we trimmed a lot out of.
Do you think you'll be reelected based on the budget that you've assembled, Mr. Chairman?
Probably not.
Table number 8, round of applause. Thank you, Congressman. All right, table number 9. Where's table number 9? Are you guys ready? Okay. All right, table number 10. Folks, we're running a little short on time. Come on now, Bob. I know this guy. Bob is participating in an organization that I know the Congressman will want y'all to know about called Braver Angels. And they're trying to figure out how to bridge the blue and red divide. So we actually got to know one another at a Braver Angels annual convention. Bob, tell us your name and where you're from, please.
Bobsy gave us Waimama.
All right. So outside the district?
Yes, I'm outside the district because I'm going to do this exercise in my community next week.
Thank you, Bob.
Learn how to do it.
All right, so you had a table full of the Congressman's constituents back there. So what number did y'all come up with?
3.5 trillion. And actually surprised me how much we reduced defense.
So you say $3.5 trillion over the next 10 years with this plan that you put together tonight?
Yes, that's what we did.
And so you looked at defense issues. What else did you look at to get you to that number?
The two biggest were defense was $1 trillion and then healthcare $1.5 trillion.
Another, but the big one is healthcare. We've got to figure out how to do something on healthcare, right? Or that could really run up the debt a lot. Bob, what was the conversation like at your table right there? Was it a good conversation? Did y'all have some substantive?
I think we didn't know enough about a lot of the stuff we were voting on, so it was a little.
Well, that might be realistic, right?
I think we were somewhat inclined to vote no on most things, just to try to reduce it. But there was a lot of, on health care especially, we want to take care of people and other things. I mean, so it's a tough balancing act.
So, Congressman Bilirakis, if you don't mind coming up front as I ask the last question to Bob, because I know you have to face this all the time. Bob, do you think you'll be reelected based on what you've done tonight?
No way in hell.
All right. Well, Bob, thank you. I appreciate that. Folks, the library closes at 8, meaning we have to be out of here at 8. So what I'm going to do is turn it over to the Congressman now. Congressman, would you close this out? And thank you very much. Make sure you email those to those. Look us up on LinkedIn, and I'll linger longer and answer any questions that you have. Congressman, back to you.
Thank you very much. Did y'all think that this was productive? Did you? Would you like us to do this again next year? Okay, and again, I like the fact that, you know, we have Democrats, we have Republicans, we have independents, and we have to come together as Americans. So we appreciate y'all so very much. And tomorrow I'll be in Citrus and Hernando County. If you want to join us as a spectator, you're welcome. Thank you and God bless you. Have a good evening.